What essential clauses should every home purchase agreement include? A strong home purchase agreement can determine whether a real estate deal closes smoothly or turns into an expensive dispute. In New York, a home purchase agreement should address financing contingencies, inspection rights, property disclosures, escrow terms, closing costs, fixtures and appliances, and possession transfer details. This contract is a legally binding agreement between the buyer and seller that sets the terms for the sale of residential property. It identifies the property, states the purchase price, explains the method of payment, and outlines the proposed closing date and conditions that must be satisfied before closing. Under New York General Obligations Law Section 5703, contracts for the sale of real property must be in writing to be enforceable. In New York, attorneys commonly draft and negotiate these agreements after the parties agree on price, which makes the process different from many other states. Attorney review is controlled by the terms of the deal and the language of the contract, not by a universal statewide 3-business-day rule. Before the contract is fully executed, the parties may negotiate revisions to the proposed agreement, riders, and contingency language. Once both sides sign the final version, they are generally bound by its terms, subject to any contingencies or cancellation rights written into the contract. A financing clause is essential because many buyers rely on a mortgage, and without clear terms, a denied loan application could put the buyer's deposit at risk. A mortgage contingency clause should state that the buyer's obligation depends on obtaining a loan at a specified interest rate within a set period, usually 30 to 60 days. It should also identify the loan type, such as conventional, FHA, or VA, and explain what notice or proof is required if financing is denied. Escrow language is just as important because it defines when the buyer can recover the contract deposit if the transaction does not go forward. If the mortgage contingency is triggered, if a serious inspection issue is not resolved, or if an appraisal contingency is met, the buyer may be entitled to a refund of the deposit depending on the contract language. When the parties disagree about escrow funds, the money often remains in escrow until they sign a written release or a court determines who is entitled to it. An inspection contingency gives the buyer the right to hire a licensed home inspector to evaluate the property after contract signing. The inspection period is usually 7 to 10 days, and under New York General Business Law Section 444B, home inspectors must be licensed and provide a written report within 5 business days after the inspection. If the inspection reveals major defects, the buyer may renegotiate the price, request repairs, or cancel the deal and seek return of the earnest money deposit. Seller disclosures are another critical part of the agreement because New York's Property Condition Disclosure Act requires a completed property condition disclosure statement before the buyer signs a binding contract. That statement covers the seller's actual knowledge of the property's condition, including structural issues, environmental hazards, plumbing and electrical systems, water and sewage concerns, and flooding history. Since March 20, 2024, sellers of 1 to 4 family residential dwellings can no longer offer a $500 credit instead of providing that disclosure statement. Federal law may also require lead-based paint disclosures for properties built before 1978. The agreement should clearly allocate closing costs, because buyers may face title charges, lender fees, attorney fees, mortgage recording tax, and a mansion tax on qualifying transactions, while sellers are generally responsible for transfer tax and often broker commissions. A careful lawyer will also make sure the contract lists which fixtures and appliances stay with the property so there is no confusion at closing. Built-in items, kitchen appliances, lighting fixtures, laundry equipment, window treatments, and other included property should be specifically identified in writing because verbal agreements are not enforceable. If the buyer needs to sell a current home first, a home sale contingency can give that buyer 30 to 60 days to complete the sale and recover the deposit if the property does not sell in time. The contract should also explain the closing process, the final walkthrough, the handoff of keys and access devices, and whether a post-closing occupancy agreement will allow the seller to remain temporarily after closing. Manhattan real estate lawyer Peter Zinkovetsky and the Avenue law firm team help buyers and sellers review these provisions, and Avenue Law Firm is located at 505 Park Avenue Suite 202, New York, New York, 10022, United States, and can be reached at 212-729-4090.